every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. Attention everybody, this land was stolen. That's why I jump on this mic like it's golden. I'm golden, and your flow is trashy. To the man who stole my antidepressants, I hope you're happy. So come and get your love like Redbone. I'm lit when I spit, you better smudge your headphones. They wantin' the bars like when they stuck in the dead zone. But this ain't death, I'm reppin' it nice. Call me the judge, cause you get sentenced to life. Pro agency, you messin' with a red fed like the game of bowling, cause we knocking down rednecks. Nah, I'm making fun, maybe them racist ones. Come on, put away them guns and stop the hating, son. I ain't trying to be the hostile who shot ya. I got no beef, man. Impossible Whopper, never took a shot at the vodka. We rockin' the proper, come on. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. I think I'm done rhyming. They say don't quit your day job, but I wrote this with the sun shining. Hey yo, I'm hotter than the sun's core. Still fancy dancing, so you know they wantin' one more. So I'll give it to them and spit a verse. Shout out to my sisters, beaded earrings and ribbon skirts. Until I'm in the hearse, we only got one chance. Gotta get this off of my chest, call it Sundance. Trying to rap for nothing. I'm from a place where the kids say, that's my cousin. Hey yo, what they say about you? I don't care, Billy Eels, I'm only here to count cool. I bounce through, yo, it's quite simple. These bars go over your head like limbo. They say, bro, yo, your raps could make it, but forget the native stuff, man, not that sacred. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back. Every day is indigenous. People say we stay resilient, yeah, until we get that land back.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the UNA USA GEOS session on inspiring Indigenous women and girls, held in recognition of the International Day of the Girl and Indigenous Peoples Day. You just heard Superman, an artist of Indigenous descent. As you heard in the video, Superman is a fierce advocate for issues that affect him and his community. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the immense amount of privilege the majority of Americans, and likely the majority of us on the call, myself included, have to be here today. We must acknowledge that most of us live on stolen land, that most of us live with the remnants of some of our world's most disgusting atrocities, that most of us chase the American dream in a nation that stole the dreams of others. We can only move forward if we acknowledge the other side of history first. Today, we are here to honor the people of Indigenous descent and girls across the globe. We must uplift people of all backgrounds to ensure a more perfect union and a more equitable world. Indigenous rights are human rights. Women and girl empowerment is human empowerment. Only by amplifying those directly affected by our decisions can we break the glass ceiling and redress some of our greatest shortcomings. As the 10th UNA USA Youth Observer to the United Nations, my platform focuses on elevating people of diverse communities. I want to ensure that everybody has a seat at the table, and that includes people who are of Indigenous descent and girls. During this GEOS session, we will meet people of Indigenous descent who are leading the frontier for a greater future. Snowwing Wagner, Mirian Masaquiza, and Amelia Marcum. For their full bios, you can click on the link in the chat. As well, we will also be featuring dances that will be featured later in the show. We're going to start with a conversation with Miriam, and we're going to transition to talk about all the issues that she would like to advocate today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mirian Masaquiza, Quichua from Ecuador. I am a staff member of the United Nations headquarters here in New York. I want to thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel. Although I could not be present with you today at this discussion, I'm glad to still have an opportunity to talk about the challenges that Indigenous women and girls face and to share some of the recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues addressed to member states, the UN agencies, the academia, and other stakeholders. But first of all, let me talk a little bit about the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which is a high-level advisory body of the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC. The forum was established in the year 2000 with a mandate to deal with indigenous issues related to economic and social development, culture, the environment, education, health, and human rights.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Indigenous women have contributed so much, even in the face of oppression. Listen to Miriam as she shares the experiences of Indigenous women breaking barriers.
First of all, let me say that Indigenous women have always been part of their people's struggle, whether nationally or international fora. In fact, there is a legacy of extraordinary women who came to the UN in the very first years of the Working Group on Indigenous Population in 1982 in Geneva, Switzerland. Rigoberta Menchú, our later sisters Ingrid Washinawato, Tonya Frischner, among others. They were young, dynamic women carrying the dreams of their peoples one step further and reaching out for international partnership and for solidarity. Today, at the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, Indigenous women participate in great numbers. Yet we know that despite their enormous assets, Indigenous women suffer from multiple discriminations, both as women and as an Indigenous individuals. They are subjects to extreme poverty, trafficking, illiteracy, lack of access to ancestral lands, non-existent or poor health care, and sadly, to violence in the private and public spheres. This violence is exacerbated when Indigenous communities find themselves in the midst of conflicts and women become the target of violence with political motives when going about their daily work, fetching wood or water for the family, and these tragic stories never made in the newspapers.
Absolutely, Marianne. And speaking of stories that don't make it to the newspapers, I know that women across the globe face unique challenges. For example, we've recently seen in the news the devastating consequences of domestic abuse that disproportionately affects women, like the Gabby Petito case. It's important to recognize that inequity still exists among women of Indigenous descent as well. Mirian is now going to elaborate on the intersectionality of being a woman and a person of Indigenous descent.
There are approximately 45 to 50 million indigenous peoples in some 90 countries, 15 of the total population of the region. Indigenous women have more difficulties than men to escape from conditions of poverty and multiple forms of exclusion and institutionalized racism. It is essential to understand how Indigenous women stand together, united and strong even after having such limitations and violence on their human rights. For instance, in light of a recent tragic disappearance of Xavi Sikimiohkitopi in Wyoming, an underlying devastating fact was revealed. There are hundreds of missing Indigenous peoples about whom we don't hear about. In the USA, for example, Indigenous women and girls face even higher rates of violence. Homicide was the fourth leading cause of death for American Indian and Alaska Native girls aged 1 to 19. Indigenous women are missing in vast numbers. A survey conducted by the University of Wyoming said 710 Indigenous peoples were reported missing from 2011 and September 2020. Native women are often not given the attention and assistance they need when they go missing. The media coverage of Xavi's case has shed light of an inequity for the United States. There have been many devastating cases across the USA that have never made the mainstream news. Getting media attention and law enforcement attention could have made the difference. Native women face barriers in the workplace, epidemic rates of domestic violence and sexual assault, and difficulty in trying to maintain the appropriate work-family balance.
Absolutely, Miriam. And certainly with the UNA USA, we hope to elevate these issues and ensure that these stories are being told and heard. At the UNA USA, we're the nation's largest grassroots movement for UN-related advocacy. The UN does so much work to highlight diversity and protect the interests of marginalized groups, including with the permanent forums. Up next, we're going to hear about what the UN is doing to support women of Indigenous descent.
However, even in the darkness hours, we stand together with one another, and we are empowering each other. Indigenous women have been fighting for their safety, equality, and well-being, and we continue to promote our rights. Their voices have been heard at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, the Commission on the Status of Women, the United Nations CCC, and other UN meetings and processes. But what the Permanent Forum has been doing in this regard? In the year 2003, the Permanent Forum have dedicated a special session on Indigenous women. Since that, a specific session has been conducted. And in the outcome of this session, the report, every session we have a specific section that is dedicated to the issues related to Indigenous women and girls. An expert group meeting organized by the Department of Economic Social Affairs on violence against women has been organized, and several recommendations have been tabled and become the tools for advocacy. In 2020, for example, another EGM expert group meeting on Indigenous peoples and pandemic was organized. This expert group meeting paid significant attention to the lack of support for Indigenous women and girls, in particular, who face higher numbers of rapes and domestic violence during the pandemic. Indigenous leaders and experts stressed the urgent need to rebuild trust between Indigenous peoples and health system. In 2019, the Permanent Forum noted with appreciation the work of the Trilateral Working Group on Violence Against Indigenous Women and Girls and urged Canada, Mexico, and the United States of America in cooperation with the United Nations entities to organize an international expert group meeting by 2021 on ongoing issues of violence against Indigenous women and girls in the region, including trafficking, as well as the continuing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Absolutely. It's wonderful to hear that the UN is doing so much great work to ensure that we are respecting the dignities of people of Indigenous descent. To create systemic change, we must unite in solidarity. Mirian is going to now discuss how non-Indigenous people can be allies to Indigenous women.
Dear friends, in finishing my brief remarks, I would like to pay tribute to the solidarity between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, a solidarity in the human family that has helped along in our struggle. I would like to turn to you and say that yes, we continue to need your solidarity and support because our struggle is long and difficult. You, non-governmental organizations, academia, students can do a lot of things. You can, for example, include Indigenous women concerns in your advocacy work and your projects. In other words, mainstream women in your work. You can invite Indigenous women in your conferences to have the benefit of their direct participation. And here, our office, the Secretariat of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, is ready to assist you on networking with these Indigenous women if you need some contacts. You can encourage a gender angle in development programming in Indigenous communities so that women are not left out. You can help raise funds for participatory development projects that address the situation of Indigenous women on support of, for Indigenous women cooperatives, for example. Remember, Indigenous women are the women that in silence are coming to you to ask for support and solidarity. We are the guardians of Indigenous languages, seeds, and also the ones who pass the traditional knowledge by generations. With that, I would like to thank you again for this opportunity, and I wish you a fruitful rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Miriam takes it from the global UN perspective. At the UNA USA, we focus on the American approach, what we as US citizens can do to champion for all of these different issues. UNA chapters across the country have partnered with organizations such as Girl Up to empower women and girls in the US, including people of Indigenous descent. This is where we have met Amelia Marcum, a young woman of Indigenous descent who serves as a Girl Up advisor to empower girls to the next level. As the UNA USA Youth Observer, I'm so honored to introduce her today. Amelia, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and personal background as a woman of Indigenous descent?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia Marcum. I'm super happy to be with you all today. A little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado, but I am Native American. My grandma was born and raised on the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Reservation up in Belcourt, North Dakota. And I'm also Potomac on my grandpa's side. So I really grew up with this perspective of like what it's like to be Native American, just from like my grandma's influence and my mom, just very proud Indigenous women. And I always had them as role models to look up to. I really felt like growing up in Denver, even though I was separated from like a lot of my Indigenous culture just because of the reservation being so far away, I really wanted to learn more and actively engage with my culture. So I began to become involved in my tribes. I actively participated in my Potomac Tribe's annual fundraiser for crafts to raise money for scholarships for our youth to go on to college. And then moving into high school, I really became passionate about rights for Indigenous veterans, as well as the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement. So I've been really passionate about that and kind of working towards advocating for these issues and getting them the global recognition that they deserve.
Amelia, that is so incredible and so inspiring. And by the way, everyone, Amelia is way too humble. She is an absolute star, and she is now at Stanford University, and she continues to elevate other people in her community, just like she discussed, to raise those scholarships and really help out everybody who is impacted by a lot of our nation's greatest issues. Now, Amelia, here at the UNA USA, we are a grassroots advocacy organization, and we work with thousands of young people across the United States every single day to elevate a lot of different issues that impact people here and across the globe. I know that you previously discussed that you worked a lot with your senator in North Dakota to advocate for support for Indigenous veterans. So can you tell us a bit more about that and how you went about advocating to your local officials and your state officials?
Yes, I would love to. So I've always been a big supporter of our Native veterans. It kind of spurs from the fact that my grandpa was a veteran, and I've been really interested in just kind of pursuing the after effects of what it's like to come back from combat. So when I was entering my junior year of high school, I reached out to a former Senator, Richard Marslays, who lives on our Turtle Mountain Reservation up in North Dakota. And he was a veteran of Vietnam and was really passionate about veterans' rights. And so I kind of learned from him a lot about like our people's commitment to the American military, and learned that we're actually the largest minority group that serves in the armed forces by volunteerism, which I thought was incredibly inspiring. So I worked with him to develop a resource guide, which helps basically our veterans get access to the resources that they deserve once they get back from combat. So a lot of these resources are available, but our veterans don't know about them, especially on these reservations where internet access is sparse, and it's really difficult for them to find the online resources that they need. So I worked with Senator Marslays to compile these resources into a centralized resource guide. And I included benefits about housing, mental health resources, family counseling, all these resources that are available within our system, but it's just so difficult to find. And I thought it was really important to kind of concentrate them so that our veterans can get the help that they deserve after such an honor and honoring us and serving. So I worked with him to compile that over several months, and we compiled about a 50-page resource guide that is being distributed in all 5 tribes across North Dakota. And I'm really proud to have participated in the project. It's been incredibly gratifying to get to see the results and what it's like and the impact that it's made on our veterans, specifically North Dakota, but I'm hoping to expand eventually to veterans across the nation.
Amelia, that is so wonderful. And I'm so glad that you were able to compile all those results and advocate for a group of people who do so much for our country. I also know, Amelia, that the UN you're no stranger to the UN. I've heard that last UNGA you presented on very important topics, including missing Indigenous women and girls. What are the US and UN's roles in protecting women and girls of Indigenous descent? And what do you hope our leaders can take away from everything that you're passionate about?
Missing and murdered Indigenous women is definitely a very, very important topic that I just don't think is talked about enough. I've personally educated myself on a lot of the missing girls that have happened, especially on Savannah's Act, which passed last year around the time that I presented to the UN General Assembly. And it basically outlines guidelines to help coordinate with police on reservations so that they can help our girls get into like a compiled database and so that they're more accessible. But this really touched home for me because Savannah was born and raised on the Turtle Mountain Tribe. Even though she's from the Sioux, she was born and raised in Belcourt, and that really hit home just to see how close to home this epidemic is hitting. And so I really wanted to help educate the global community because I think missing and murdered Indigenous women is kind of it's talked about in the US, but it's not really reaching this global scale that it needs. And we really need to educate the international community about the issues that we're facing with the underrepresentation of Indigenous women. I think that a lot of other groups get this attention and it reaches this kind of national level, but it's really difficult when these minorities aren't being like taken or murdered at 10 times the national average. And those kind of like statistics that I was doing when educating myself made me incredibly passionate about making sure that this reached an international level. So I had the opportunity last year through Girl Up to speak at Yunga and actually present on the topic. And I kind of outlined the key issues that are going on within the community, as well as key takeaways that we can continue to do, such as educating the global community, as well as compiling resources so that we can drop this average of like 10 times the national average, which I think is absolutely unacceptable within our community. We need to ensure and better protect our girls so that we can invest in the future of all girls across this beautiful community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amelia. Thank you for sharing that story. How can all of us be more accountable to share the stories of Indigenous women and girls and the issues that are impacting them?
I think allyship is a key part, but also if you're Indigenous, I encourage you to share your story. Every family has a powerful story of survival. We have all endured so much, and it's incredibly important that you share your story of triumph. For me, a source of motivation is my grandma. She was born and raised on the Turtle Mountain Reservation and actually grew up extremely, she was just extremely inspiring to me because she grew up on the reservation and ended up leaving at the age of 19 and going on to be the first college graduate in our family and advocating. She actually created a program called Indian Pride, which is a PBS national television series that she created to highlight these stories of Indigenous people. And I really encourage you guys to check it out. It's incredibly powerful to see these stories and show that Indian pride is still alive. And it's not this story of the past. We need to continue and bring this into the 21st century because our stories are powerful. And so by amplifying the stories of Indigenous people and encouraging people to share their stories of triumph and overcoming these struggles is really imperative today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amelia. And thank you for all the work that you do with Girl Up and to serve as a change maker in your community and beyond. Up next, we are going to hear from Snow Wing. Snow Wing is mom to Xavi Wagner and who is an 8-year-old oldie style jingle dancer, and Sikimiohkitopi Wagner, a 6-year-old old style chicken dancer. They're all, by the way, of Browning, Montana, but reside in McElmo Canyon, Colorado. Snow, it's so great to have you here with us.
Hi, it's good to have us. I'm glad that you thought of not only myself, but my 2 little ones that, been doing all the online specials as much as they can. And sorry, we're coming to you from our vehicle. I expressed earlier that we live down a mountain canyon area, and we have no cell service, no Wi-Fi, and it's actually snowing as we speak.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, so we have to drive into town where we have good cell service so we can be able to join you all.
Oh my goodness, no, you are so incredibly dedicated and we appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much. And I heard that you said that you have your children here with you. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, we'll have my daughter go first. Hi.
Hi.
To all my Blackfeet people, Oki, Nix, Dukwani, Suni, Taniku, Xavi Wagner. Hello everybody, my name is Xavi Wagner. I'm 8 years old, and my Indian name is Dedetsetse Aki. It means not a real snake woman in my Blackfeet language. I'm enrolled with the Blackfeet tribe. I'm also part Blood and Ute Mountain Ute. And my parents are Snow and Mike Wagner. I have a little brother named Sikmi, and I have a new baby sister named Amonisi. Today, I will be dancing old style jingle.
Amazing.
Oki Nexukwani, Suni Daniku, Sikimiohkitopi Wagner. Hi, my name is Sikimiohkitopi Wagner. We're glad to be with you, and I'm 7 years old. Even
and I'm with the Blackfeet tribe. I'm also part blood, and I'm also youth now and youth. And today I'll be dancing chicken, but the way that that someone taught me it is called Kitoki Basta. And we're glad to have you with us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much.
Baby. Her name's Amanisi.
Hello. Hello,
Yeah, her name-
Manisi.
Yeah, it means otter in her language. And Sikmi's name, Sikimiohkitopi, it means black horse rider. It was his great-great-grandfather's name.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Thank you so much. It is such an honor to have y'all. You're my favorite celebrities. And we are about to watch one of y'all's dances. We're going to start with Xavi. Amazing. Xavi, that was such a beautiful dance and you are such a star. Next, we are going to thank you. And next, Xavi, we are going to see your brother dance. We are going to see Sikmi's dance in just a moment as well. Amazing. Wow, y'all are both so talented. And I saw in the chat, Janice asked, what do these dances represent? So Xavi and Signy, would you like to discuss what these dances represent?
My dance means healing an elder.
Well, she's a little nervous. She's always been so nervous, but it's a healing dance. It originates from the Ojibwe people, and that's an old style jingle dress dance. Nowadays they have another type as well. It's called contemporary jingle, and that's more like it just sounds more contemporary. It's more modern day, a lot more footwork and stuff like. But the old style jingle dress style that Xavier's doing, that one originated, like I said, from the Ojibwe people, and it signifies a healing dance. And the story behind that style is there was an old man who was very sick, basically on his deathbed, and went to sleep, and he had a vision. And in that dream, he dreamt of a woman dancing in that style of dress. So when he awoke, he told his daughters of his dream. So his daughters went and made that dress. And traditionally, those kind of old style jingle dresses, they have 365 cones to represent every day of the year. And when those girls put that dress on and danced for him, he was healed. And so that's where the old style jingle comes from. And then Signy, right on yours.
My dance is from one of my.
It's from my tribe.
It's from my tribe.
The Blackfeet tribe.
The Blackfeet tribe.
Yeah, and the old style chicken, that comes from my son and husband's tribe. That's the Blackfeet tribe, same with Xavi. It originates from that tribe. And it's now people say that it represents prairie chickens fighting and stuff. That's not it. It's actually like the mating dance of the prairie chicken to impress the woman. So it's kind of like a romantic style of dance. And that's what the prairie chicken represents, is winning your mate. That's why when he ruffles, he's imitating a prairie chicken.
Amazing. Wow, that is so incredible. And Xavi Sikimiohkitopi, thank you for teaching us about the dances and for showing us some of your skills. It was so great watching you dance. And like I said, y'all are my favorite celebrities. So it's so great to meet y'all virtually. And Xavi, I have a few questions for you first. So Xavi, as a girl, why is it important for you to learn this style of dance and express yourself in this way?
Like I said, she's very nervous. I don't know why.
Aww.
She's our shy one, I guess. Normally she never is. You put her in front of anybody, she just goes crazy talking, but I don't know.
Okay.
Well, this style of dance, what she was telling me earlier is that, she's proud that she can carry on the tradition of, this style of dance and to express herself. Me as a dancer, when I was younger, I danced jingle, fancy, traditional. And growing up, as my mom always used to ask me, what do you think when you dance? And I was like, that's a good question. And even now I couldn't even answer it, but it's a feeling you can't describe. It's a connection that you cannot describe, or a feeling you can't describe. But all I know is it's an honor and a blessing to, feel that. And I know that she feels that. She's just, I don't know, being really shy today. But yeah, that's what she was telling me earlier, that she's like, I can't really explain it. It's just a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And no worries. No, when I was a kid, I was so shy that if somebody talked to me, I would hide behind my mom's dress. So I totally understand. She is so.
I'm total opposite. I've been apprentice since I was 5 years old. My mom put me in pageants, and I've held titles all throughout the United States and Canada. And like I was telling her, I was doing speeches and everything, and I'm really outspoken and really shy. I think it passed to my son, because as you can see, he's just keeps rambling on and on.
No, definitely. No, it is so great that your children are so adorable, and we're so lucky to have them here with us today. I guess I have a couple more questions for Xavi. And Xavi, it is no problem if you don't feel comfortable answering these. We would just like to know October 11th, which was yesterday, marks two really important days for us. It was the International Day of the Girl and Indigenous Peoples Day. Why do you think celebrating these 2 days is important?
The reason why we all celebrate these days is because it's a day for us, so then we can but we can be free, so then we can celebrate our Indigenous Peoples Day. And for me, I'm always Indigenous Peoples Day every day.
Love it. Thank you, Xavi. And Sikni, I have a question for you too. Why is your style of dance called the old chicken dance? And what does it mean to you to be able to perform this?
Because it's like with our honor and stuff, and like I love to dance this chicken, and I'm happy to dance and stuff in front of people because I'm not that shy.
We can tell you exude confidence, and you are a natural born performer, Sikni. It is incredible to watch you just take the spotlight and really shine.
And thank you, and we're happy to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Sikni. It's been amazing talking to y'all. And Snow, I have a few questions for you too. So,
Okay.
what's the importance or significance in teaching your children these styles of dances? I know you've kind of talked about it already, but we'd love to hear more about the story behind it as well.
Well, I guess for me, growing up, my mom was actually not traditional at all. She was horses. She was actually a jockey. She was a barrel racer, really into rodeo and, like I said, horses. And she was a farm girl. And as for my dad, he's really traditional. Growing up, he was never involved with church or anything. It was always ceremonial. And so I kind of picked up after my father. And, my mom was the religious one, all the churches in one. She said she can remember growing up as a kid going to like 4 churches in one day. And, she was a religious one. And what my grandfather instilled on her was, in this world, we're going forward, we're not going backwards. And so from my mom's side, it was more the contemporary side. And from my dad's side, it was the traditional side. And my dad is an enrolled Ute Mountain Ute here in Colorado, Southwest Colorado. And so am I. I'm enrolled with the Ute Mountain Ute tribe. And I'm also part Navajo. My mom is Navajo. And that right from the beginning is a big no-no. Utes and Navajos from long time ago, they don't get along. But
Wow.
my parents were married over 45 years, and unfortunately lost my mom in 2019. But, she being who she was, like through ranch hand and through horses and stuff like that, she didn't know the traditional stuff or even the power circus stuff we do now. She actually learned. And to learn that from someone that grew up traditional was such an honor. And she learned so much. And she always used to tell me, she's, I've been to a couple powwows and I never, ever thought that I would have a child that would continue going on doing all of that all these years. And then, now with my kids, I make sure that they learn and keep that going because, like I said, I did all styles of dance. And so I made sure that Xavi does all the styles of dance as well. So she can keep it going and keep so that when she starts her own family or whatever in the future, she'll do the same thing. Because that's how, as Indigenous people, especially women, we're the teachers, we keep it going. And even with my son, I get so much, compliments for him because I'm not Blackfeet. That the style of dance he does comes from his tribe up in Browning, Montana. And they actually have 4 bands of tribes as well. It goes all the way into Canada and Alberta and stuff like that. And I get compliments on that because me not being Blackfeet, I'm the one who taught him his style of dancing. And my husband, he's not a dancer. He's a singer, actually. And he's an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe. And he actually sings with Black Lodge Singers, who is, I believe, I'm going to say 6-time Grammy nominated singers. And that was another thing. We actually attended the Grammys virtually in March because they were nominated for a Grammy. They didn't win, but it's okay. You know, just to be a part of the experience was a whole new thing, even virtually. You know, it would have been nice to have been there in person, but you know, there COVID, it was virtually, but experience that you can say we were a part of. Even that is a simple tradition of keeping on singing and dancing and learning songs is an amazing feeling. And you know, and I hope that my kids keep it going and I instill it on them to keep it going.
Oh my goodness, no, I love that. And congratulations on the Grammy nomination. I just want to ask one more question, and it's kind of two, but I know that you're a mother to both a son and two daughters. And so, is there a difference that you see in terms of passing along traditions or expectations? And how does it feel to do something that your ancestors did and pass along those traditions?
Sorry, my baby's getting that, so I'm muting and coming back on. But you know, like it's amazing. It's a feeling I can't describe, and I'm mostly just honored and blessed that I did have that teaching and that I can carry it on to my daughter. But yeah, it's just an amazing feeling and blessing, and I hope that what I teach them will continue on with their children and so on and so forth, because they have a lot of culture and history from being way down here in the Southwest to all the Northern Rockies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Snow. We're now going to move on to a larger Q&A with the entire audience, and our goal is to make this session as interactive as possible. And so I am going to do a chat wave so that as we ask the panelists some questions, you will be able to share into the chat box. And you'll also be able to ask any questions that you have for the panelists in the Q&A as well. So for those of y'all who are unfamiliar with the chat wave, essentially it's where we wave to each other in the chat via the chat box. So I'm going to ask you, pose a few questions to y'all audience members, and you can do, and then we'll be able to hear the panelists' perspectives from these as well. And so I am going to ask a question, and then I'll count down from 3, 2, 1. And once I get to 1, send in your answer into the chat box so that we can hear about your answer to the different question. So, for example, the first one is, who has had technical difficulties before on Zoom or on their computers, anything like that? 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're seeing some private messages. So Snow hasn't had technical difficulties, but many of us have had technical difficulties. And so as we go through this Q&A, please know that there might be some pauses, there might be some crashes, but it's all a part of the Zoom process. And we're so excited to be able to engage with y'all as we move forward through this chat. So we're going to skip some of the practice ones and just go ahead and move on to the first one, which is asking the audience, do you know someone or an organization or school that still refers to October 11th as Columbus Day? 3, 2, 1. All right, we're seeing some PMs and some messages. So it's a very interesting topic to discuss, and I'm interested in hearing from our panelists. How can we work together to bring down the problematic term of Columbus Day?
I can go ahead and answer that. I think that education is really key in moving towards a future of inclusivity of Indigenous stories and really educating people on the problematic past of Columbus Day by talking about the pain and tragedy that it caused on our people, and really just juxtaposing that with the idea of colonialism and all the destruction that colonialism brought, and really educating people on why that shouldn't be celebrated, and instead it should be reclaimed by our people as a meaning of celebration rather than a day celebrating destruction.
Thank you very much, Amelia. And Snow, would you like to answer that as well? All right, I think we can, while we're waiting on Snow, we can go ahead and move on to the next question, which is, in school, right now it's October, but next month we celebrate Thanksgiving in the United States. In school, were you taught that Thanksgiving is a unifying holiday of friendship? 3, 2, 1. Some people are putting in, a lot of people are saying yes, and that was the narrative that I was taught as well. But as many of us know, that's not the actual case. So, Amelia, I know that in school, most of us were taught a very inaccurate narrative about what Thanksgiving is. What can we do to advocate and change that?
I think moving forward, again, the idea of reclaiming the holiday for Indigenous people and instead recognizing while it's important to be thankful, and I think that Thanksgiving in our country has taken a meaning of being grateful for what you have, and it's a great thing to be thankful and to take that time to celebrate your family and all that you have, but also recognizing that the historical this historical foundation of this holiday was actually built on genocide rather than friendship. And so maybe instead trying to combat what actually happened on Thanksgiving with a new narrative of being grateful while also remembering the past is important and key. But moving forward with the mindset of always remembering what happened to our people while also being grateful for the holiday and celebrating it with family.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I guess moving on to our next question. How do issues of respecting Indigenous rights intersect with the SDGs? And I'll give you all an extra little moment to think about how to write that out. But 3, 2, 1. And while people are compiling their thoughts, Amelia, I know that respecting the rights of people of Indigenous descent intersects with environmental issues such as the construction of harmful pipelines. Why has it taken it so long for many to recognize these intersections? And how do the SDGs intersect with elevating and empowering people of Indigenous descent and girls?
I think the environmental aspect is really key by recognizing that this was our land first, and land acknowledgements are something that's really important that I think we're moving in the right direction of. But I think that a lot of the consumption in our country comes from a place of like greed and not really remembering that all of this land was originally stolen land, and you can't really move forward with the sustainable development goals without really recognizing the problematic history of claiming all of these resources for ourselves, rather than recognizing that originally when Indigenous people were on this in this land, we were really conservative about what we used. We used every part of the buffalo as Plains Indians. We made sure that we were using clean water and respecting that. And I think that needs to continue, especially with things like the Dakota Access Pipeline, and ensuring that we all have what we need and we all have access to the resources we need without one person having too much, which is really important, especially with the common resources that we all share as a country and as a society. We need to ensure that everyone has enough before taking too much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Amelia. And Snow, I know that you might be having a little bit of technical difficulties, but if at any time you'd like to add, please feel free to unmute as well.
Hi, okay, I'm back. Sorry. Trying to get everything.
Amazing.
Baby got a little cranky. But for I believe the first question, what was that about?
Yeah, it was about how the first question was how we can work together to bring down the problematic term of Columbus Day.
Yeah, well, like for our school, it's amazing. My kids attend Battle Rock Charter School. It's part of the Montezuma County, but not really a part of the actual RE School 1 district. And it's amazing. They really embrace their Native American teachings and stuff, because they've even had Navajo classes. They've learned some Navajo language. They've learned some Ute language, even some Ute stories and Navajo stories. And when my kids come home and tell me stories, I was like, how do you know that story? Oh, well, we learned it at school. And they have some Native Americans on staff, like their cook, and their principal is actually a Navajo as well. She's a enrolled Navajo from the Navajo Nation. And they just do such an amazing job with their kids and instilling, they're all one. I asked my daughter that one time in a serious questions all, do you at school, or do you feel like there's groups or anything? She's all, no, because we're all one people. And I was like, And then even my husband asked her one time, do you have any, African-American kids that attend your school? Because we're a really small community where most of the communities, either Anglo or Native American, and that's about it. And some Spanish. And she's like, what do you mean African-American? That's when she was younger. And he's like, well, Black. I don't know what you mean. And then we couldn't help but feel a little bit, prideful and thankful that she didn't see color. She just saw people, other kids as hers. And even her school taught her that too, that, they're all one people. And even like when they have Thanksgiving and stuff like that, they do call it Thanksgiving, but they make their own food. Like they even have their own little garden at their school. They make their own little food. They do their own little presentations, and they make sure that it's accommodating not only the non-native kids, but all the parents and everyone. And I just love their school, and I think they're doing a good job. And I think like within our community, it's becoming more pro, and I'm glad that it's that way, because me growing up here, I've lived here all my life, and it wasn't always this way. It was pretty bad, and even now, not saying it's perfect, we still have people, drive with Confederate flags on the back of their vehicle, or constantly upside down flags, and it's unfortunate because I love my home regardless of whatever the political issue is or whatever people think against Native Americans, because we are also a border town. So a lot of, natives and other natives from other states come here for unfortunately the alcohol, and it's sad. And you only think that there could be more help, but then again, someone has to want that help. And, and for this Indigenous Day and for like Thanksgiving, I try to teach my kids that, the real story of it all, but also I want them to enjoy what their friends believe too. I can't just instill just one thing, unfortunately, it's a bad history, I guess you can say, a bad background, and they do know about it, but I want them to remember that. And by remembering that is to also honor and respect, and to keep, doing the teachings that I hope that they learn from me and their father.
Absolutely. I love that so much, Snow, and thank you for sharing your story and everything that they're doing at your school, at your children's school. This has been such a wonderful GEOS session, and I'm so glad that we were able to come together to discuss these really incredible and important issues. GEOS are programs that not only dive into subject matters such as respecting Indigenous and girls' rights, but they also offer audience members a chance to act for these issues. Deep-rooted challenges continue to impact Native Americans today, and we would really encourage you as UNA USA members and supporters to please text Indigenous to 30644 to encourage President Biden to support Indigenous people in our country and others. We want to uphold our country's commitment to the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And so again, please text Indigenous to 30644 to ensure that we are advocating for their rights. Connectivity of women and girls across the world, especially those facing similar challenges as Indigenous people, is incredibly important. And I would like to send it off with Amelia to discuss any closing remarks that she has and discuss any action items that we can do to ensure that we're standing in solidarity with people of Indigenous descent. Amelia, take it away.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'd like to thank you all for participating in today's session. And I know it was really impactful to hear about all of the stories. And I'm just really grateful to have had this time to learn a little bit more and educate myself further. And I'm hoping that you all learned something as well. I'd also love to encourage you all to continue your engagement, not just today, but moving forward. We've made a lot of progress in amplifying Indigenous voices throughout the last couple of decades, but it's also really important that we acknowledge Indigenous people moving forward, and we reclaim our stake in the global community. So if you're Indigenous, share your story, and we're all important, and all of our stories are just as impactful about survival. And I really think it's imperative that we all speak up about about rising up and how important it is for all of us to share our story of survival, because every single one of your stories is important. And if you're not Indigenous, become an ally and amplify the voices of those who are underrepresented in your community to ensure that everyone can get the representation that they need in today's increasingly diverse society. So I'm really grateful to have had you all here, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day today and every day throughout the year.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amelia. Thank you so much, Snow. Thank you to everybody who attended. And we are just so honored to be able to have celebrated these two important, impactful holidays with all of y'all. Thank you again for attending our UNA USA GEOS session, and wishing y'all a great night. Bye, everyone.